Why don't we buy the cars that we are supposed to buy? Automotive journalists have been telling us for decades what we should want in an automobile, and we tend to believe them, for good reason. But being an automotive critic is hard, as most of what they do is subjective, and people have different needs and wants. There are essentially 5 basic aspects that cars are designed for. Space being the easy one, either for passengers or cargo, as a box remains the most effective way to package space, although it has a lot of limitations, perhaps not the least of which being aerodynamics. Performance is usually the one that gets the most attention. Cars designed with the cutting edge of modern engineering, at least in theory, requiring at the very least reduced weight, reduced drag, superior traction, a low center of gravity, structural rigidity, and squeezing the most possible from its power supply. They may be impractical, but at least they're expensive. Fuel efficiency has a lot in common with performance. Low weight, better aerodynamics, an engine designed to get the very most out of it, although in this case, the most mileage instead of the most power. And of course, traction is sacrificed to reduce drag. Now, economical doesn't necessarily mean low cost. Hybrid systems, advanced transmissions, multi-port fuel injection, and aluminum and carbon fiber are not the cheap answers. Cars designed for a budget are as minimalist as you can get. You get nothing for a nickel and twice as much for a dime. Luxury, on the other hand, can mean different things to different people, but in the end, it simply means paying more in hopes of getting more. More features, more room, more status, more power, better materials, better build quality, better fit and finish, and more things to go wrong. But in the end, all cars are a compromise, designed to meet all of the above criteria in varying degrees, as well as safety, emissions, and whatever regulations might be thrown into the mix. So how do critics decide what people's priorities are? Well, they don't. They just rate the subjective things based on their own preferences and experiences, and then try to focus on the non-subjective things. 0 to 60, or 0 to 100 if you prefer kilometers, the quarter mile, slalom, skid pad, brake distance, miles per gallon, better handling, better performance, better mileage, even higher quality materials and more advanced engineering make sense. Where it all falls apart is that we've come to judge every type of vehicle by these same standards, which focus primarily on performance. And it is the subjective things that often make the difference, but the non-subjective things that we're basing our decisions on. How can a better performing or more economical car not be a better vehicle? If we were looking at different classes as different sizes of vehicles, or the same sausage in different lengths, as the saying goes, it wouldn't be a problem. But the point of different classes isn't limited to different sizes of vehicles, but different needs. A lower center of gravity makes for a better handling car. But in a cargo van, cargo space holds priority over handling, or at least it should. And we've all heard the controversies of SUV rollover issues, because a slalom is obviously the best way to test off-road prowess. And yet we really don't hear about the issues with ground clearance of sports cars, no matter how many people get stuck on curbs or speed bumps. In a serious off-road vehicle, a hose-out interior is preferable to one with plush seats and delicate electronics. You've seen the "It's a Jeep thing you wouldn't understand" stickers? Want to know if you're a real Jeep guy? Do you have a carpet? Think that 3-row seating might require you to give up some performance advantages to a 2-seater? Of course it will. Okay, maybe we are looking at more extreme cases and oversimplifying things to some degree. But this is also part of the reason why many classes have gone away. Not because of handling, specifically, but because every vehicle is expected to meet the criteria of a sports sedan, or at least have some better excuse as to why it doesn't than personal preferences. A tiny hatchback is considered more practical than a coupe with a giant back seat if the tiny hatchback has more doors. That's right, a practically useless back seat is considered more practical than a roomy one as long as it has doors to access them. And it may be in some cases, particularly if those back seats have even smaller seats sitting on top of them. But as a backseat passenger on many a long trip, I can say I would gladly trip over a seatbelt in exchange for space that isn't going to have my legs asleep within 20 minutes. Some of you may recall that a coupe with a roomy back seat is called a two-door sedan, and at least most of my subscriber base is old enough to remember those. Whereas today, a sedan with no headroom is called a four-door coupe. In truth, the idea of a sedan being the practical option is a bit misleading. Any argument you can make for a sedan over a coupe would ultimately suggest that you should have gotten a wagon, and any argument against the wagon would point you back to the coupe. The sedan is ultimately the compromise. A practical shift in design? Not that I don't believe an SUV sedan is in our future. We already have four-door hatchback SUVs, as ridiculous as those are. And isn't a crew cab pickup with an extra short bed and a tonneau cover already pretty much the same thing as an SUV sedan? Not that I'm against new body styles. If anything, I'd like to see more variety. A coupe SUV has already been tried, and it didn't catch on, while a short wheelbase two-door SUV that is actually capable of rock crawling and stump jumping is practically a forgotten concept. In fact, it seems that everything that is a two-door these days is considered a GT. Long gone are the days that any plain Jane car came in half a dozen body styles, half of which were two-door. Two-door hard-top station wagon, anyone? Darts and Valiants even had special names for two-door sedans, the Swinger and the Scamp, while the two-door coupes were the Demon and the Duster. But critics have basically convinced us that four-door sedans are more practical, and we should get the best performing ones available. But it turns out, people don't buy cars that they're supposed to want. Light, agile, high performance, and economical? Yeah, that describes every SUV available. In an age where you can get almost every feature in a small car that you can get in a big one, and usually get better handling, why wouldn't you choose efficiency over some boat? That's easy, because it sucks. Ever spend an entire trip being kicked by a 2-year-old? Think that will be easier to take when he's 15? How much do you enjoy sharing elbow sweat on the center armrest with your front seat passenger? But it's more than space we want. We do want power. Not performance, but power. Ever find yourself rocking back and forth as you apply more and more throttle going up a steep hill? An issue that marketing from the 1960s tried to convince us no longer existed, but economy cars have brought back from the dead, particularly those equipped with automatics. Ever get a case of sweaty palms trying to pass an RV on the highway? If you believe we are all trying to save the planet with our automotive purchases, compare Yaris sales to Suburban sales. And just admit that economy cars are for people who have given up, and that you have too much passion for life. You do want power, even if you never need it. It's nice to know it's there. Power to pass, power to tow, power to make your boyfriend jealous of your sweet, sweet ride. Yeah, you car girls know who you are. Sure, you're too mature to wastefully shred a set of tires. You wouldn't be seen revving your engine at a stoplight. Can't have any of those embarrassing cars and coffee moments after all. And let's not forget that four-wheel drive. Oh, you'll say it's for added security in bad weather, but you know it really is just a Jeep fantasy. A practical option that lets you play in the mud and snow. Now, I could be wrong. You could have done the research to find the ultimate green hypermiler and not one of the millions of SUVs sold each year. But what the sale of SUVs tell us is that buyers don't really care about performance and handling, or mileage for that matter. They want space, comfort, versatility, and possibly the option to tow. The same aspects that sold station wagons in the 1970s. And they like the security of all-wheel drive, even if off-roading really isn't on the agenda. What it boils down to is priorities, and the realization that they're not always going to be the same. A single car can't be all things to all people. Some people do want to do the Rubicon Trail. Some people do want to autocross. Well, some people want to drag race. Some people are hypermilers. And some just want to be comfortable and relaxed while they deal with the daily grind of gridlock. While others want to know that after a day behind the wheel, They're not going to feel like they've spent that day getting beat up. Boat-like handling may be exactly what you want if it gives a cloud-like ride on the freeway. While some people like to keep it as simple as possible, other people just want as many buttons as possible. But what we are supposed to want, of course, is a sports sedan. And sports sedans are great, but they don't appeal to everyone, and it's an error to think that they do. Buyers have proven they are not only willing to buy a worse vehicle, but pay more for it. Why? A higher seating position? Maybe that's all it is. Maybe it's not. Today, most manufacturers see variety as your choice of half a dozen similar SUVs that are the same as everybody else's half a dozen SUVs. While the cars that share the traits of SUVs are long gone and considered impractical, and the cars that we are supposed to buy instead are also not being purchased, leaving manufacturers to try to figure out what will appeal to both buyers and critics alike. As always, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe and comment below.